Killzone2 is taking place on Helghan, which is the Helghast homeworld. It's no longer situated on Vecta, which was the backdrop for both Killzone1 and Killzone Liberation. You're now part of a large-scale invasion, and if Matthijs, can you start a level? The player is part of a group called the Legion. They are a special forces unit. It's a new player character called Sev, and Sev, together with his group, is called in whenever the Navy is in trouble, and they need to perform special operations, basically. So what happens in this level is the player is dropped from the cruisers that are overhanging the planet on something of an aircraft we call the Intruder, and basically there's a convoy which is trying to make its way to Visari's palace, Visari being the leader of the Helghast. And actually, let me just run this a little bit further. And that convoy is being stalled. The convoy is stalled due to heavy resistance at the square where the player is landing. There's mortars taking out any land-based vehicles or armed forces, and there's something we call an arc weapon, which is firing electricity up into the sky and taking out anything that flies. And that's exactly what is happening here. One of these intruders gets shot down by this electricity firing weapon. So the player is asked to come help the Navy out and basically flank these weapons, flank the enemy, and take down this resistance. Now, to show you some of the things that we've created for this, I've now paused the game and detached the camera. I can now control that with the keyboard. If I go in there, zoom in there, we can see that it's all 3D. It's not an image. All the polygons are there. The reasoning behind this is we want seamless integration from cutscene right into the gameplay, to stay into the cinematic style of things and to have the player have that real sense of immersion. We wanted to have it as seamless as possible. That's why we're loading all of this data already. And if I go back, it's not just the detail that is in the environments. If I can take a quick look at one of the characters here, they are highly detailed, and that's one of the reasons that having this amount of polygons really requires a PlayStation 3 to bring this to life. This level alone takes up about 2 gigabytes of data. That's a lot of information that the PlayStation 3 has to chew through. Luckily, we have something called a Blu-ray, which allows us to have the storage capacity to pull something like this off. Now, if I unpause this and fast forward, we've seen this now. They start speaking in funny voices, but that's okay. I can speed things up, I can slow it down. Slowing down is particularly useful because as we're in development, we need to make sure that all these motion captured animations, all the collision, and that everything is working as it should work. So we often just slow it right down and see if everything is there and if everything is working as it should. So Matthijs can still run through. It's, of course, everything is in slow motion. You can see a lot of effects going on here. There's a lot of different things that are happening. You probably noticed some of the motion blur that the wind is throwing up. We've got full screen anti-aliasing going on, so it's a very smooth picture that we have. And if I just detach the camera one more time, move a little bit forward and up, show you the overall view of the city. One thing that we've implemented is something we call post-processing. We're post-processing the entire image. The reason for this is that we really want to tie everything together. So all of the effects, all of the characters, the lighting that is going on in the world, all of the detail in the world itself, it has to have a certain feel. And these post-processing filters really allow us to bring those together. If I turn these off, you'll immediately see the effect that there's a lot of different colorization effects going on. There's contrast that's reduced or that's actually made heavier. There's some blurring going on. All these things are done using our post-processing filters. And again, this is what brings that world together. This is something we can do dynamically. So throughout the level, we can change these settings. So as the weather changes or as the environment changes and we feel we need to have a new sort of tone to the level, we can dynamically adjust these filters and make the environment look different. What you see here is the urban environment. Of course, there will be different environments in Killzone2, but just to showcase what it's doing particularly to this environment. What you'll also notice is that there's, if I just give Matthijs full freedom again, there's hardly any HUD. There's no additional information, no sort of game-related information that's displayed. All you can see is some little debug information that's on top now. Of course, that won't be in the final game, I can assure you. The idea behind not having a HUD is really that we want to have the player fully immersed in this world and to have a really cinematic experience. We're going for something we like to call Hollywood-type realism. It's not realism as in a simulator, but it's realism slightly over the top, slightly exaggerated to get the player really into this game. We're doing that partly through a HUD that is absent for most of the time. Of course, there are some cases where we need to give vital information and the player gets that through the HUD. But at other times, if you look at things like the health bar, we don't display that at all, but rather through post-processing are able to communicate that visually to the player. So we'll desaturate the image and up the contrast, add a little bit of blur, and the player will know I have to go into cover because things are getting scary now. So that's part of the reasoning. Also, it's not just visually that we're immersing the player into the game, also through the use of audio. We're supporting 7.1 surround sound, and we're using something called audio occlusion, which ensures that as we're on a big open space now, things will sound differently from when you're inside of a smaller room, where there's a roof or where there's bigger walls. Then you'll hear different sounds. So it's all part of being aware of where you are in the world and making that come alive. Now, if we look at some of the gameplay features that are going on here, we can see your buddies who are taking cover behind these low cover plates, and they're able to pop up and shoot over them. Same for the enemies. This is something we call lean and peek. Now again, going back to the immersion, we want to keep the player in first person as much as possible. So we've implemented lean and peek for the player as well, but all in first person. Now maybe Matthijs can demonstrate that and explain some of the ideas behind lean and peek in first person.